Are you a feminist with complicated feels about sex work? To be a true ally to sex workers and support the integration of sex work within feminist frameworks, here are 10 ways you can help. Support decriminalization. Advocate for the full decriminalization of sex work, not just partial measures like the Nordic model, which harms workers. Sex work should be treated as a legitimate occupation that doesn't put individuals at risk of criminal charges. Honestly, if feminism can support the right to choose your career, whether it's as a CEO, a scientist, or a stay at home mom, then it should definitely be able to support the choice to be a sex worker. Don't be a feminist that pushes for laws that make people's lives harder than, actually supporting bodily autonomy. Listen to lived experiences. Prioritize the voices of sex workers in conversations about their rights, needs, and experiences. Recognize that those with lived experience are the true experts in navigating the challenges of the industry. It's almost like we might know a thing or two about our own lives, right? Who would have thought that people who actually live the experience would have the most useful insights rather than those who read a book or watched a documentary and suddenly became experts on our reality? Challenge stigma. Use your platform, whether personal or professional, to challenge the stigma surrounding sex work. Normalize conversations about sex work as a valid form of labor and personal choice. Well, it's much easier to keep pretending that talking about sex work is some sort of scandalous taboo rather than, just acknowledging it's a job like any other. But sure, let's keep acting like it's somehow more acceptable to talk about accounting than, people's actual survival. Support labor rights. Advocate for labor protections for sex workers, including access to health insurance, workers' compensation, and safe working conditions. Ensure that sex work is included in broader conversations about workers' rights and economic justice. Because apparently the right to a fair wage and safe working conditions only applies to everyone except those who don't punch a time clock in a cubicle. Sex work is work, folks, just with more glitter and less pretension. Let's start acting like it. Push back against carceral solutions. Stand against carceral feminist approaches that attempt to rescue sex workers by criminalizing clients or instituting policies that disproportionately harm marginalized groups, such as trans people and people of color. Let's not keep handing out prison sentences like participation trophies in the name of protection. Because nothing says, I care about your safety, like making things even more dangerous and pushing people into the arms of law enforcement who couldn't care less. Educate others. Combat misinformation by educating yourself and others about the realities of sex work. Be prepared to discuss topics like decriminalization, labor rights, and the intersectionality of sex work with race, class, and gender. It's much easier to keep believing whatever you saw in a Netflix documentary than, actually learning from people who've been there. But sure, let's all keep pretending that a quick Google search is the same as actual education. Support sex worker led organizations. Donate, volunteer, and collaborate with sex worker led organizations that are working for policy change, providing services, and offering solidarity to workers in the industry. Oh, you're not going to donate to a group actually led by the people who know what they're talking about. Instead, you'd rather fund organizations that claim to save people while perpetuating the same old harmful rhetoric. Classic. Let's all just keep pretending we know better than the people living it, right? Fight for economic justice. Recognize that many sex workers enter the industry out of economic necessity and fight for policies that address economic inequality, such as living wages, affordable housing, and comprehensive social services. We are not only allowed to care about economic inequality when it's not too uncomfortable, right? Let's fix poverty, just not in a way that, forces us to acknowledge that surviving sometimes means taking jobs that aren't exactly prestigious in the eyes of the privileged. But sure, let's talk about living wages as long as we don't mention sex work. Amplify advocacy for safety. Advocate for safer working conditions and the right to work without fear of violence or harassment, both from clients and law enforcement. This includes the right to choose safe working spaces and maintain control over one's body. Wow, what a wild concept. People should be able to do their jobs without worrying about getting hurt or harassed. Who would have thought? But sure, let's keep acting like sex workers are the only ones who don't deserve basic workplace protections. Avoid exploitative rescue narratives. Reject narratives that portray sex work as inherently exploitative or something that needs to be eradicated. Instead, focus on supporting sex workers' autonomy and rights while rejecting the rescue mentality that often leads to further harm. Ah, yes, because nothing says, I care about you, like deciding that your life is so awful it must be fixed, even though you're perfectly capable of speaking for yourself. But hey, let's keep pretending that rescue from people who don't listen to us is the best way to go.